got information that an individual had entered a home and looked like he was actually chasing after a female with a gun in his hand. There were occupants in the residence that was under construction, and by the time we got there, the occupants had left, except for what we believed to be a female and the subject in the house, is what we were told. So as our two deputies approached the residence, they witnessed and encountered a male holding a gun and holding what looked to be a woman against her will. Of course, they immediately gave commands. Upon sight with us and contact with us, the individual departed and ran into the house immediately. At that point, there was separation between he and the female, at which time we heard a gunshot, which clearly we believe was being intended for either our deputies or the victim. And the victim, we called her to safety, got her out of the way. Our officers were able to gain cover and concealment the best they could given the situation. She got to safety along with some other individuals, innocent bystanders, that were down the road behind a brick wall, stucco type wall, at a safe distance. This comes into play later because the individual, we could continue to try to give commands, and the individual flanked and came out of the rear and flanked our deputies. They saw him trying to engage what we believe to be his ex-wife, or his soon-to-be ex-wife, his estranged wife, and she was over there with those other bystanders behind what we thought was safety, but he was shooting at them. Our deputies engaged him after giving him commands, and he fired on our deputies. Our deputies returned fire, which ultimately resulted in the individual being hit several times, and ultimately resulted in the death of that individual. And so we had supervision come on scene. They did an incredible job of controlling the situation, but what should be noted is that these deputies, despite the unimaginable trauma of the situation and going on, and the stress of a violent encounter like that, they held their composure. And what needs to be noted is the training that these individuals take was paramount in the safety of those citizens that they were there to protect, as well as herself. They had poise, composure like I've never seen, like a 20-year veteran. And one of these individuals was out of field training for 1 day. The other one's only been on our agency for about 1.5 years. But they acted with such poise and such composure based on the training, the preparedness. We always have to stay vigilant and prepared for situations like this. And even though they're rare, these guys, their training certainly kicked in and was beneficial to them with a successful outcome for us and for the citizens of Okaloosa County. Also, it should be noted that our records are indicating that this individual is an undocumented alien that was here. He's already been deported once in 2012 based on his criminal history. And my big question is, how does someone like that get a gun? How does someone like that be able to have a gun to do a violent act like that? And why is the person even here? So those are the takeaways for me. And if you have any questions, I'll be glad to.
Yeah, will your office be identifying that man that you guys shot?
We have identified him the best we can, frankly. I mean, that's a great question because we don't really know who he is. I mean, he's here, what looks to be an undocumented alien, so we believe we've identified him. And if he is who we believe he is, and he's approximately a 45-year-old Hispanic male from Honduras. So he's been arrested for no driver's license in the past in 2021. Like I said, he's been deported before, but we're working with the federal agencies to try to confirm his identity for sure. He's supposedly been in this area for almost 20 years. He did get arrested or charged from us from driving with no license in 2021.
Structure nearby? Right?
It wasn't a structure, it was a wall that we felt was a safe place. It was, I would guess it was at least 70. Flanked from the rear, we only had 2 deputies on the scene. And so they're trying to do the best they can to set up a perimeter and they obviously keep themselves safe and the citizens safe. Shot at our deputy first, our deputy returned fire, and then the second deputy engaged him, and ultimately he was hit multiple times.
How much time passed from when they arrived on scene to when he was shot dead?
I'd have to pull the tape to be exact, but I would say from the time he was shot and to the time that we arrived on scene, I would say less than 2 minutes. Because he was barricaded into the home by himself. First and foremost, I would be remiss if I didn't say this. Our deputies are safe. Our citizens are safe. That's first and foremost. But our deputies are getting the treatment they attorney. They're going to be on administrative leave with pay, just like we normally do with protocol. As far as internally, so we do a criminal investigation first, okay? And then there's an internal investigation, an administrative investigation, and then when we complete that, it's actually reviewed by a third party, the state attorney. And I want to add, the state attorney's office staff and their investigators and attorneys were there on scene last night with our officers working cohesively with them.
Will FDLE look at this case at all?